Amazing Women Speak podcast, inspiring and motivating every Black woman to own, honor, and execute her amazing, individually and collectively, as it was established at birth.
I'm Crystal Gunn, financial strategist, founder of the Amazing Women Network, and host of Amazing Women Speak. And I pray that everyone had a wonderful holiday. And so before we get into this conversation, please do me a favor and share this discussion. And this one is truly for everyone. And so since my dad passed in 2017, the holidays have just not been the same. I still show up, but the holidays are not the same. And I'm sure there are lots of people who can relate to that. So this episode is definitely going to help as we talk about mental health and the holidays. So Michele, I have my tissue ready. But welcome to you, and let's just jump right into this thing.
Absolutely. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to another edition where we provide amazing women a platform to share their stories, to share their expertise, and to overall just make us better as Black women. Really excited to be able to invite back a guest that we've had before as we were lifting up and paying attention and awareness to our mental health. She is a practitioner and a friend. Stacey Williams, please come in here and introduce yourself.
I'm in here. Hello, ladies. All right, thank you for such an awesome introduction, and thank you for having me here this evening. I'm grateful to be here. My name is Stacey Williams. I'm a licensed professional counselor. I am also the owner of the Restoration Village, which is a therapeutic and holistic service that we provide individual therapy, community resources, community outreach events, just holistic approaches to healing, and specifically healing from trauma. And so I come to you by way of Waterford, Michigan, and originally from Jamaica, but I'm here, been here for the last 22 years, and I'm just grateful to be a part of this conversation this evening. So thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So Facebook, as we share every week, please, you are invited to be a part of this conversation as we talk about mental health during the holidays, which can be challenging for many of us. So please feel free to utilize the chat. And if you have comments, questions, we will like to invite you into this conversation by lifting that up. So we will be paying attention to the chat. Please join us in this conversation. As I say each week, this is the fastest hour of your day. This one is going to bless and benefit you at a level that you may not yet even be aware of. The holidays are designed to bring us joy, but life happens to many of us, and it really makes us look at how we lift up, honor, celebrate these holidays a little different. And so what is it like to be able to ask for help? What is it like to pay attention to those triggers, right? And how do we still show up, like Crystal said, how do we still find some joy when there's sadness all around us? So that's what we want to talk about tonight, really paying attention to how do we get through the holidays? How do we enjoy whatever ways in which we celebrate, recognizing that it is still a celebration. So Stacey, we always want to just launch deep because this hour goes really, really fast. And so I want to go there, right? Like right out of the gate. So when you think about the holidays as a collective, right? Like Thanksgiving hits, and before we know it, it's Christmas. And then we're bumping into New Year and really trying to think about how I want to be different the following year. How do we stay present in the midst of all of the things that are going on inside of us and in this world?
The first thing to do is to even acknowledge whatever your state is, whatever your condition is as it relates to the holiday, acknowledge it and be honest and real with yourself, because we know that the holidays, as we say, is supposed to be a time of joy and the most wonderful time of the year. But in reality, for some people, it's the worst time of the year. And it takes a toll on their health. It takes a toll on them just in general, like high levels of anxiety for a variety of reasons. But you have to be able to acknowledge, like Crystal started off by saying, since my dad has passed, it hasn't been the same. That's acknowledging the state and the condition that you're in as it relates to the holiday and what to look forward to.
So naming it, right? Like, so we talked a little bit last week about the importance of naming it. So that's the first step, right? So now I can acknowledge, I too, like Crystal, find this to be a very difficult time of the year. As I think about my father, who, if he came home no other time, came for Thanksgiving, right?
Yeah.
So there's a weight, a sadness, and also paying attention that this is my mother's favorite time, right? Like, it's right after her birthday, and she's really thinking about, and so trying to balance joy and sadness, right? Like naming it, and then how do we begin to think about what some of the strategies are? So I've got a couple things I want to ask you. The first one, Stacey, is now a good time to get into therapy if we have not previously been, to help us address, or is it, and I'm going to air quote this, too late?
No, it's never ever too late. I think now is better than never, right? Because there's so many factors, Michele, that goes into this whole holiday thing and just the experience that people have with the holiday. So I'm listening to your dynamic. So it's your mom's favorite time. You're missing your dad. You want to probably honor both of them. And literally, you may not even feel like showing up is worth it because you may be just too overwhelmed, right? And some people still go because of family traditions or family expectations, not even because they don't want to be there. I don't want to go, but I'm going because if I don't go, I got to hear mama voice. This one gonna be mad. And just think of the stress of that alone. But it's the holiday, right? You're having a good time and you're just like over here battling with yourself. Should I go? Should I not go? Oh, I'm gonna go, but I'm gonna go late, so I don't have to stay long. And it goes on, and that's stressful. It's a lot of stress that goes into the holiday. There are few families far in between that everything is just kosher. It's the holiday and it's just glorious. And we're all just so ecstatic to be in the presence of each other. But every family has some dynamic that they have to kind of navigate during the holidays. And it creates stress for some people more than others.
So you said, right, like it's now versus never. Get into therapy.
Let's talk about it.
If you find yourself struggling,
yeah,
on your own, right? Like, so back when we were lifting up a mental health month, right? Like you talked about, it's the tune-up, right? Like it's the thing that we all need.
Yeah.
And right, like when you get to the holidays, you begin to feel this sense of urgency, this sense of sadness, right? And so I'm glad to hear you say that it's not too late, even if you have not looked for a therapist, even in the middle of this, it's still a good time to do that.
Yeah, it is. And I think, as we talk about, you went back to my analogy, like the vehicle needs tune up, and maybe it's not a long time. Maybe you just really need to process some family scenarios, because this is really where they show up in the holiday. The toxic family cultures, the poor boundaries show up the most during the holidays. The unspoken expectations show up randomly, and it creates stress. And in addition to that, some people feel like it's chaotic. Not necessarily that it is, they just may feel that way because of all the things that they have to navigate in order just to go through this one day, So.
Right. Yeah, it is. It's a lot of stress about one day. And so thank you for also lifting up, right? Like it may not be my long-term assignment to stay into therapy, but the idea that you can come and get some resources and some tools to help you deal might be something somebody needed to hear tonight, right? Like,
yeah.
Right? Like we think of therapy, we think of something that's really long-term, and it doesn't have to be.
No,
Okay.
It can be a two and done, a one and done. I just need to process this. And let me get some clarity and even some support. Like sometimes you may just need somebody to say, yeah, that is a lot that you're dealing with. And how can we develop a plan around the holiday? And I do that with clients all the time. Like for literally this one day, how can we develop a plan that keeps you safe mentally, emotionally, and protect you from whatever you may be experiencing because of the holiday.
So
So,
go ahead.
so I'm glad you lifted up the piece about not only sometimes not wanting to show up because there was a loss of a family member, but also the trauma. There's the family member that's going to be there, that's going to trigger whatever and for whatever, because we didn't, we know Uncle such and such wasn't right with the kids, but we don't ban him from coming to the holiday. But is it okay not to show up?
Absolutely.
Mm.
It really is. Yeah. Sometimes that might be the best thing for you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's hard, right? Like that's hard to balance, like you said, right? Like mom's going to be disappointed if you don't show up, or family members are going to, when you're really just trying to protect your own
yourself. Yeah.
Yeah.
And maybe you say, I'm showing up for 5 minutes. I'm showing up because I'm going to honor my mother, but I'm out. Mama, here's your gift. I'm giving you a hug. Hey, everybody, how you doing? I'm moving on, years ago when I worked in Havenwick, and one year I actually worked on Thanksgiving Day and on Christmas Day, just because it gives you like a different perspective. And on those 2 days, I remember people saying, I'd rather be here in the hospital than with my family.
Wow.
And that's where you heard all the dynamics that involve getting together with a family. And one lady said, I would rather be here with the voices in my head than be around my family. So though, it's like really, it's significant how family plays a role in how people experience the holiday,
So, right, so we're getting ready for Christmas. What are some of the strategies that I can begin to think about? Because there's other, right? Like it's not just about loss. There is stress that comes with, I don't have the financial resources to provide for my children that I want to, right? I got laid off recently, and we're seeing that all over the news, right? Where folks are being laid off during the holidays. We know that there's an uptick in suicide attempts during the holidays. So it's not just about the loss of a family member. There's other losses that we have to pay attention to as well that seem to show up or get elevated more during this time of the year. What can I start doing now that's going to help me maybe be able to be present for my family, especially if I have younger children?
Okay, so I'm gonna just go back and hit a couple things, Michelle, before I go forward. So one of the things is that statistically, I know we tend to think that the holiday, we see more uptick in suicide attempts or successful suicides, but statistically, according to the CDC, that's not factual. Actually, they said the most times where suicide peak is during the spring and right at the beginning of the fall. So those two particular season changes. And no rhyme or reason, but that's when the numbers reflect that we have more suicide attempts. Now, do we have an inflation in where mental illnesses tend to be impacted by the holiday? Absolutely. So for example, if you have somebody that struggles with schizophrenia, they tend to be more paranoid for all kinds of different reasons around this time of the year. Individual that may be struggle with bipolar may be more manic or more, like on the low side. So it just depends on what their mental illness is, but mental illness is affected a lot during this time. And so when you think of those things, in addition to mental illness, we have just general family stress. So Michele talks about the fact that your family may be saying, okay, we're doing gift exchanges here, but you got laid off and now you feel the pressure to participate or not to participate. And if you don't participate, what's the ramifications in terms of the family response? So you have that. And then you have traditions that your family practice that you just literally outgrown. Like, I don't want to go to Big Mama's house and sit there around the tree and talk about this, and I'm bringing barbecue every year. I don't want to necessarily do that. I want to travel to France and see somewhere else, and the family may shun you, so you have to deal with that. And then we cannot minimize the role of toxic family bonds. Okay, so we have the different family traumas, the poor boundaries that families just experience, individuals in certain families experience all the time, and they show up, they rear their ugly heads the most during the holiday, because everybody's gonna say, I don't know if you ever hear this one, but one of my clients has said they literally call her and say, "Oh, we having Thanksgiving at your house. Nobody asked, nobody determined, is this even convenient for her? No, we showing up." So make room, and you have to deal with those dynamics that create more stress and anxiety. And so as we started off by saying, how do you take care of this? You literally have to be able to name whatever your condition is. Wherever in that spectrum you fall, you need to be able to identify it. Right?
So let's go back for 1 second though, as we did before. What is mental health? And right. And so again, we talked about going to therapy, but I'm not crazy, right? So
Right.
What does taking care of your mental health, and what does that look like? Because some people may think, I'm super stressed out for the holiday, and that has nothing to do with your mental health.
And it has everything to do. It's just that well-being. So your mental health is your emotional well-being. In general, how are you able to function? How are you able to cope with life stresses? And when they come, how do you respond? Are you able to respond in a way that's healthy, or do you find yourself feeling erratic, overwhelmed, so stressed to the point that you're not able to function? Then your mental health is being impacted. So your state of well-being is being impacted. So you can have somebody who the holidays coming, and for them the stress is a good thing because they're looking forward to the family. So cooking for 3 days without sleeping is exciting for them. Somebody else that will put them out, right? Because that's too much. That's now their blood pressure is going up, and their heart is racing all the time. Well, you have two responses. One where the stress may motivate performance, one where it impacts performance. And so when you have your state of well-being and your ability to function impacted, then we have your mental health is being affected. And it's just that simple. You're on mute, Michele.
So I want to talk a little bit about some in the moment strategies, right?
Yeah.
Like we hear people say, take deep breaths, count to 10, right? Like leave the room, gather yourself and come back in, or like in the moment, right? What are some of the things? Are those good strategies when our anxiety starts to bubble up, or we feel ourselves getting stressful? Are those good in the moment strategies to help me get through it when I'm in it?
Yeah, that is really, those are like the basic quick ones. Like I'm gonna grab it real quick. I'm gonna take a deep breath. Some things you can do is, for example, just going to the bathroom for a break, just so you can take a moment to regroup, to talk to yourself, to rebuild your strength emotionally, to keep navigating, taking deep breaths. Even as when we know what we know, I always say this: when you know what you know, you prepare for what you know. Let's not be oblivious. We all know what our holiday situation looks like, especially adults. Children may not be able to communicate as effectively, and they kind of have to go with the flow. But as adults, we know. We know if we're looking forward to the holiday, and we know if we can't wait for this one day to be over. If you're saying, I can't wait for January 3rd, yeah, you probably need to, let's come up with a plan. So identify what it is that your circumstance is. And two, identify what is it that you're going to need to get through that. So what does that mean? All right, so my circumstance is, honestly, people are going to show up from my family that I really do not like. I know they're coming. I know I have to be around them. I do plan on going, because if I don't, I'll have to hear my mom's mouth and all of that. So what is it that you need? Okay, I only need 30 minutes to an hour of this. What time is dinner? 3 o'clock. I'll show up at 4. Because then we'll probably be ready to eat, and I can handle an hour of this, and I will leave, because that's all I can handle. And I just need enough time around my family to say I was there and I'm good to go. Okay, so identify what you need, recognizing what your triggers are. Who is a trigger, right? Is it loudmouth Uncle Joe? Or is it the fact that you're going back to grandma's house and you have bad memories at grandma's house? So being able to identify what those things are for you is really important. And if you can be honest with yourself, then you can honestly navigate this time of the year. And sometimes we judge our situation because it sounds bad, or I can't believe I went through this. But literally now is a time more than any time to let's just be real about whatever that situation is, so that you can work through. Maybe it's a time to start dealing with some of those experiences because you're being honest about them. And you know what? You never talked about what happened. No one knows what happened, so thinking about that. Another strategy I think of is being able to identify what is it that you're thankful for. And so it's easy to complain. It's easy to find fault in everything. We really can, but how can we identify what we're grateful for? And as we think about the holiday, you both will probably say, I would really want one more holiday with my dad, but I don't have this. So what am I grateful for? Because you can't be consumed with the reality that they're not present and what it was like when they're not there, but how do you celebrate their life by honoring them through gratitude? So an attitude of gratitude, writing the things that you're thankful for, the things that make your life happy and complete, even though literally we're still talking about one day that sometimes seems like it consumes our whole mind because it can be so stressful. All right. Thinking about what it is that you can do and what you can't do. So instead of people may do something like this: I'm not gonna pay my light bill because I gotta go buy these gifts. And literally, can you afford to do that? So when you realize what you can't do, just acknowledge that. You know what? I really can't get everybody gifts this year, but I will write some thank you. I will write some cards, or I will make sure, my mom get a blanket. I'm just giving examples of practical things that you want to do, because if you don't pay your light bill, or you don't pay your heat bill, or you skip your credit card bills, but you run up the credit cards, no, January is coming. And you have to deal with that. No, you carrying the stress into 2023. All for one day.
We compound our problems a lot when we bury and don't address. And as Black women, right, as women of color, we hold so much. We're supposed to be strong all the time. We're supposed to have it together all the time. So we'll do these things, right, to keep up with the Joneses, or to provide again for a way for our children in ways that we weren't provided for whatever reasons, right? We continue to do those things, and we don't have the strategies, right? We don't know. And so we'll figure it out in that moment. And that is creating a level of stress that we don't need to add to our already stressful lives. I really appreciate you lifting that up. So I do want to back up.
Okay.
For many of us, right, the holidays in general are a really good time. And right, we see so much in social media about that. If I had one more day, one more conversation, it's hard to fully embrace and enjoy the holidays, even when thinking about all of the good times. That absence is so real, present, right? That absence is so present. And right, I think about what's the difference of I need to still address some level of my grief versus right, just a natural part of me missing somebody on this particular day, versus how much grief work is still left to be done. And in this moment, I'm absolutely talking to myself, right? Because again, as women, we press through, right? We show up for everybody else and forget to take care of our mental well-being during all of this. And so it's that one thing, right? Somebody who did not intend to be the trigger triggers you in that moment.
Oh,
right?
yeah.
And so is there grief work that's separate from, and if I'm not clear, please push on this. Is there grief work that's still present that needs to be done so that you can show up for that one day and have the right strategies versus my normal mental well-being check.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Grief work has to be done. Honestly, it literally it has to be done, because when you think about the fact that this one day may amplify the fact that you haven't done any grief work versus it just being like, oh, I missed them for the holiday. It shows up in the fact that because there was no real processing or no real work done to treat what you're dealing with, it just kind of like collides on this day with everything else. So it is essential to make that time. And like, even working through grief doesn't have to be a long drawn out process. Just as we said, it can be something that's brief. You know, it can be some form of brief therapy. It can be therapy that you do every other week. It can be something you may do once a month, just to check in and connect, because it still needs to happen. It's not going to go away. You know, it's just going to be something that still needs to be done in your life. And it's essential to do that, because the holiday sometimes make those situations worse.
Yeah, so I really like, again, the importance of naming it, because there's multiple things that are going on, right? And so there may be a different strategy for dealing with each of those.
Yeah.
Right, like the strategy for dealing with the stress or the financial is a little different than what is the strategy for me to emotionally be present for people that I want to, right? Like, I'm not even talking about worst case scenario, best case scenario. I enjoy being around my family, and right, like there's a different strategy that I need to employ to be able to be emotionally present. And then there's a strategy, right, like when the dynamics of the family aren't great. And so being able to name that, I just want to keep leaning on that. Is so important.
It
Otherwise,
really is.
right, like you're throwing darts when you need to not be, right? Like you're taking guns to no violence. Like,
but the thing, what happens is we judge ourselves a lot, right? So we judge ourselves, we judge our circumstance, and saying it even to ourselves or thinking it to ourselves, we may experience shame and guilt that this, you know, because we're trained that family is everything, and we say these things, and I'm all for that, but we have to be able to also say there's a time where there are things about the family or because of the family that may not necessarily be good, and it's okay to acknowledge what those things are, you know, because it's not all bad, and family is a wonderful thing, and family is beautiful, and I love family, but sometimes the individuals in our family create experiences for us that really affect and impact our mental health, and we won't talk about it because family is everything, you know.
And there's going to be, I can imagine there's some level of, instead of therapy, there's some level of self-medicating, alcohol, other type of drugs,
which is not a good response. Yeah. And people do it all the time, you know, so there's no real self-care, because if I have to acknowledge the reality of what happened, it's too painful, right? So it's easy to numb my reality. It's easy to just keep going. I'm gonna just keep doing this just because this is what I have to do, but not put into words what you're dealing with or what's really going on. So now we start in a whole new year, and the cycle continues, and we recreate these unhealthy patterns because we're not naming what the problem is. Nobody will acknowledge it. And maybe you grew up in a family environment where you were invalidated all the time. So you don't feel like there's any value in saying anything, even to yourself, about how you're really feeling, because who's validated you ever, right? Oh, girl, that was just your uncle. You know how he is.
right.
Girl, y'all was just playing. Y'all, you know what you doing too much. Like, who you still talking about that?
No. So that leads me to a really, I don't know, a question that I think, what does or how does the person who doesn't have the thing, right? Someone else has had this traumatic experience. Someone else has has the thing. How do I respect, respond, uplift, encourage, support the person that has the thing, whatever that issue may be during the holidays?
Yeah. Well, if you do know whatever it is, you can really ask, how can you help? Right. And then you may say, so I'll say for this particular holiday, my daughter felt like it was just too much for her to be, she's like, Mom, I need to talk to you. I said, okay, what do you want to say? She's like, I want to be respectful to let you know. I just think that being around everybody this year is going to be too much for me. I said, well, what is it that you want to do? And she said she wanted to go over to her godmom's house. I said, okay. And that was my way of supporting that, instead of beating her over the head like, you need to be around family. It's the holiday. How dare you? Blah, blah, blah. We're not doing that. So if somebody can communicate what they need, then you can support them. Some people may not necessarily communicate, you notice they didn't show up this last time. You just want to know, hey, you planning on showing up for the holidays? Is there anything you need? How can I support you? Maybe it's a text, right? Because depending on who the person is, depending on how they could respond, depending on what's going on, just being there to support, and letting them know whatever you need, let me know how I can support you. So
and I think
depends
it
on how
might
it
be,
comes.
if you notice, if you're paying attention to the people around you and you're at that holiday event and you can see that someone's having a time, giving a hug or going over to them and just rubbing them on their back without causing, a lot of attention to be drawn to them, but just letting them know. I think that someone in the room gets it.
Yeah. We're happy to see you. I just want you to know I love you. I'm glad you made it.
So I want to bring up two things that have been lifted up in the chat, right? Like, in addition to people showing up at family gatherings, so do our unresolved issues, right? Like, we bring them, some of us, it is our +1. And then we unpack that. It may start with, right, like the snide comments, the shade, right? Like, but we bring unresolved issues to family gatherings, right? Like, ooh, and I'm going to see so-and-so, and I'm finally going to, right?
Tell them, get them phone.
Right? And it disrupts, but it comes with us every single time, right? And so how do we pay attention to that, right? What are some of the strategies if I know, right? Like, if it happens every single time, how do I disrupt the pattern of that? Do I not show up? Do I name it up front to the group, right? Like, nope, this year we are not going to ... right? Like, we need to come together and focus on family. Do we name it for the collective, or do I just pay attention to it for myself?
Well, I think a lot of times being able to have those conversations with whomever the disruptor is, even if you are the disruptor, being able to identify that. Maybe you don't know, because sometimes, a lot of times, to be honest, people really aren't aware of their behavior, and they're not just doing it because they don't know. And nobody has taken time to say, hey, you do this, or if it should happen, it's just not well received. And I think family needs to recreate normalcy where we talk about what's wrong. And a lot of times we do not.
Right.
And as I'm speaking to y'all, I'm speaking to myself, because there are times as I'm sitting and reflecting, there are things that probably needs to be addressed, but we just kind of ignore it. Like, you know how they are. You don't even say nothing to them. They come if they come. If they show up, they show up. If they don't, they don't. They whatever. And when they show up, they're the ones that bring the disruption, right? So now everybody's either walking on eggshells, or the tension is amplified because such and such is present. But we go year after year, nobody's addressed it with them, or even had the conversation like, hey, when you come around, you're this, you're that, or whatever the scenario may be, and let's talk about it as a family so we can move forward.
Yeah, and
but family don't do a lot of that.
Right, before Uncle is 3 drinks in, let's have the conversation, right? Like,
as a matter of fact, you know what? It's October. We're gonna start talking about it now, because you gonna come, and you coming back in the hand, and we need to let you know.
Right, yeah, like I said, otherwise it'll continue to show up. Absolutely. Right. So, and then I want to lift up one other thing that came up in the chat. Crystal, as you were talking about how do I provide support to a person, right? And so Ramona says some people don't even know what they need support for.
Yeah.
Right? Like when you haven't done the work and you just know that you've got all these emotions that are showing up. And it's a collective of a lot of things, right? And so sometimes the support that somebody offers doesn't feel like support, right? Because we don't even know what we're grappling with in that moment, right? And then that person has a reaction because I tried to help, right? And then that creates a whole nother dynamic.
Oh boy.
How do we begin to figure out what that support? Come on, Crystal.
No, she just said, "Oh boy," and I'm like, "Yeah." I think though, part of it is leading with genuineness and love. Like if I see you struggling, I don't want to go over here and douse it with some gasoline and make the fire bigger. Right? Because there are those that are going to do that. I think leading with love in that, and it may again not even be words that you show the support because you don't know what that person is going through.
Yeah, and you have to almost just be mindful. Like my personal approach would be in a situation like that. I may send a text and say, "Hey, I just want to let you know, I don't know what you may be experiencing, but I'm here for you if you need anything. If you want to talk about it, I'm here to help you." You know, I may personally send a quote or a scripture or just say, "Hey, I'm praying for you," right? Because you don't make any assumptions that way. And you may know something is going on, you may not know specifically what's going on, but at least you have presented a door for somebody to knock on or walk through if they choose to. You know, because depending on the level of the relationship, it may not be something that's received because of whatever. You know, we just think of how complex sometimes family dynamics can become, and you may have been someone that have offended maybe way back in the blue moon, but your ability to impact that person in this moment is minimized because of that offense years ago. So you may not even have the access you need to be able to impact them. So you have to kind of be as what's the word, gentle, or maybe just like tiptoe as much as you can. So it just really depends. But you're right, Michele. They may not know what they need, and you may not know either. But you present the opportunity where if they decide to talk about what they need, you are available to them in whatever way.
So I need to go back, and then Stacey, I want to talk about, right, like for those of us who our emotions are jumbled and wrapped in many places. You talked about this during Mental Health Month, the power of journaling. So I want you to be thinking about that as a strategy for helping us unpack some of our emotions. But I also want to go back to something Crystal said and being able to identify some things about ourselves, right? So I'm getting ready to go to the function. And we say it sometimes in jest. And we know that there's power in words, right? Like, oh, I'm about to go over here, so I need a drink to handle so-and-so, right? Like, and it's the joking thing that we say, and there's an ounce of truth in that. And so if I already recognize that I have to alter my state in order to be in somebody's presence, that's the first sign that I need to already be thinking about strategies in that self-plan, right? Like, again, we say a lot of that jokingly.
Yeah, absolutely. You need a plan. I always talk about safety planning, and safety planning is not because you're in crisis or anything, but you are coming up with strategies to deal with certain situations. So you can keep yourself, your emotions, your mind, and your well-being safe. Because you're right, if you got a drink to walk in the front door, it's time to really think about that.
Yeah, like I said, a lot of us say it jokingly, right?
Okay. Yeah.
Right? Half-heartedly. Let me say it that way. A lot of us say it half-heartedly, knowing that that person does trigger something in us, right? And so our strategy is I need to numb. And so, right, like leaning back on what Chris was talking about, that self-medication, be it alcohol or any other thing that's going to alter your state of being in order to be in somebody's presence. says, right? Like I need to start doing some work. I need
Yeah.
to start doing that self-plan. So yeah, I wanted to be able to lift that up because it's really important. And we kind of ran through that. But many of us utilize that as a strategy or have said that that's going to be the strategy that I employ. So one of the things you did talk about, right, like is a really important strategy that ties all of this in and really being able to unpack all of the emotions that seem to get heavier during the holidays because other things are also compounding it. The power of journaling.
Absolutely. I believe in it so much because journaling provides for you that safe space to talk about you, to unravel, to unpack, to yell, to cry, to scream on those pages. Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube is not the place for that. Okay? Because what it tells the world is that you got something going on. And why look for answers from a world of people when literally you need to spend that time, even if it's uncomfortable, because I get it, it can be uncomfortable. You're facing you, and if you're not used to that, that can be hard. But you have to start somewhere where we're saying, you know what, I really need to talk to myself, because that's what you're doing on these pages, about what's going on with me, right? So that you're not showing up in a way and presenting in a way that's triggering for you, for others, that's going to cost you more in the long run than just this one moment. And it's really impactful that we see ourselves as valuable enough to care for me. I'm valuable enough to care for me. And I don't have to care for myself in a way that's unhealthy or in a way that makes it look as if I'm having fun, but I'm really destroying myself in the process. So let's take the time to be real with us and to take the time to do the work that's necessary to get well.
Can we stay there for a minute? Because you just said something really huge. Valuable enough to care for me.
Yeah.
Because we live in this world, especially with Black women, where again, we put everybody before us, right? The children, the family, the parents. And we're going to go through this thing, whether we want to go through it or not, because everyone else needs us to show up.
Yeah.
How do you start to say that I matter and I'm worthy and I'm valuable, so I have to care for me first?
I think it's time to do it now. You say it now. Let's start now.
Kim says that belongs on a shirt, right? Like that's a t-shirt. Valuable enough to care for me.
Yeah. It starts now. It doesn't start next week. We can't wait till the day before Christmas. It starts now.
So what do I do? How do I start? Because someone's is like, okay, I know you're right, but I have no idea what to do.
Yeah. Identify what is it you need. What is it you need to do to care for yourself, right? So that can look thousands of ways. Some people may just need to get off the phone, right? Some people may just need to stop working overtime, right? Some people may just need to stop eating. Some people may need to start exercising, going to bed early, taking 10 minutes a day to do things you need, getting some structure in your life and the lives of the people around you, because as women, we're never ever just caring for ourselves, right? So we're caring for ourselves, the kids, the husband, the dogs, the parents, the niece, the nephews, the grandkids. We have all those factors going on. So what we have to think about is, how do we put some boundaries around how we care for ourselves? Listen, this week after the holiday, Friday and Saturday was my time. When my phone rang, I made a decision. I love you, but I'm not answering right now. And I really don't owe you an explanation.
Right.
Yeah.
The phone rang and I kept going. And it's okay, because I cared for myself this weekend. And I gave myself permission. My house didn't need cleaning. Nothing needed to be done. It's all about me. And it's
And
okay.
even if it needed to be done, it'll be there on Monday.
How
It
about that?
sure will be.
That part.
So giving and being okay with some of those spaces that we
Mhm.
need to find ourselves in. Some of us may need to take a bath, right? May need to get away. I've had clients that literally went the next city over and booked a hotel for the weekend because that was their way of caring for themselves.
Right.
So identify what it is that you need in order to start doing that. So you know where you are, you know where your topsy-turvy is, because when you're not balanced, that's what we're talking about. How do you get back in balance? You know where that is. Some people need to connect with their faith because that's out of whack and that's necessary for their balance. So you need to identify for yourself what that thing is.
So a lot of really positive feedback about the power of journaling in the chat. And I really liked one of the comments around, you have to fight the urge to stop journaling because sometimes it hurts, right? Like you said, Stacey, when you're facing you, what you don't want to do is write a fairy tale, right? Like you really want to strip down and be raw to discover who you are. That's the place for healing, right? Like, and another listener talked about that vulnerability that's necessary in journaling. So there really is a lot of benefit to it. Even as you were having some of the conversation around finding that balance. What is it, the thing that I need to do? Like you could discover some of that in journaling. Go back and read some of the things you wrote a month ago, right? Like what was present, what needs to be worked on. There's a lot of value in that. And I really like Ramona said, when you like start, like just stop overthinking it, right? Like we'll think a thing and rethink it and strategize and try to achieve perfection. Doing something, even if it's not the perfect step, it is a step outside of your comfort, outside of, and just stop overthinking and try on some things is important.
And your tears are okay, right? Our tears represent a form of cleansing and a form of release that's needed for our emotional capacity to be unloaded. And it's okay. Like I journal and it be snot and tears and the pages wet. It really is okay.
Yeah.
And not being afraid to really face us. I say this, I'm with me all the time, right? There's no escaping me. So no matter what I bring, I'm gonna show up in all my spaces. But my God, if I'm gonna show up, let me show up healthy, at least sort of kind of healthy, at least sort of kind of aware of who I am, you know, enough to know, you know what, if I go here and this happened, this is how I'm going to respond, but I don't have to respond this way because I'm aware of myself and I can do this, and that. And so we show up in a healthy space.
Here we are once again, right? Like, again, I told you the fastest hour of your day. So we've got 28 days before Christmas. And then we are, right, like, and then we are, what, 6 days, 5 days after that, when we do the thing that I really wish we would stop doing, putting so much pressure on December 31st to change our lives and course and direction for what we're going to do in 2023. What can we start practicing, right? Because, right, like I just wrote in this post yesterday, it's not a light switch. Life is a dimmer. And if you keep waiting for December 31st to flick the switch and think, ta-da, right? Like I'm going to do ... If you aren't practicing that thing now, if you haven't already been practicing, I promise you, January 1, well, there's no magic, no confetti coming down, right? So we've got, again, 28 days to Christmas, understanding that the holidays are hard for many of us in many different ways. Or I'm waiting to do this thing because I know January 1 is coming and I'm going to be new year, new me. Stop it. What are some strategies like that burns me? Like I can't. Right. So what are some strategies, Stacey, as we begin to close this conversation out that we could just keep talking about? What can I start doing in preparation and thinking about what's coming for 2023?
Yeah, just start thinking about what is it that you want to see for yourself, right?
Write that down.
Writing it down. Again, that's where your journal comes in. start planning, start being proactive, start being intentional about our lives. We have such amazing journeys that we encounter daily and yearly, and we're still blessed to be here. A lot of people that we know personally are not here to live this story. So make it count, you know, even with the planning, even when we plan and are intentional, life throw us curveballs, right? And life throw us things that within the year kind of may shake us, but we still got to stay focused on what we intend on for ourselves, you know. So last year we did a group of ladies. We are bold and fearless women, and we did a vision board party, but it didn't just stop there. Quarterly, we met throughout the year to connect with each other and to identify how are we doing with our goals and what are the curveballs that life has thrown us, and how do we still navigate to accomplish what it is that we feel that's in our heart. Or we may have found new goals along the way to add to what we started working on. But we just have to really be intentional. Write it down, whether you're writing it on a sheet of paper, you're putting it in your phone, but have a plan somewhere for what you want to accomplish for yourself. Be purposeful, be intentional, be caring about yourself, loving you. You know, like Michele said, we don't want to be filled with all these things, new year, new me, or I'm living my best life, or you only live once. All that sounds good, but what does it mean?
Right.
Like, you just saying stuff to be saying it because everybody's
Right.
saying it.
Right.
What about what's going on with you? How intentional are you about your life and what it is that you need to be doing? Like, every single one of us by this point should have identified things that happened this year that changed us, that inspired us, that motivated us, that convicted us. We really should. By this point right now, we should be able to identify those things that we accomplished, things we need to accomplish, things we need to stop doing, things we need to start doing. Like, we should be there, you know, with the, we should have the capacity to be able to identify that by now.
And I think we live in this microwave society, literally and figuratively, right? But we want everything to happen right now, right? So there's some people that are going to start journaling and say, I'm not fixed, or I'm not, you know, I haven't recovered, and you wrote 2 pages, right? And it's like, the trauma happened so many years ago, or the thing happened so many years ago, and you're still holding on to it. You may or may not be able to release it into writings. For somebody, it might. Just to be able to put it on paper or to speak it out loud as you write it may help with the healing. But don't stop, right?
No, don't stop. There is, our journey never stops. My husband likes to say continuous improvement never stops.
That's right.
Right? We're evolving, even in our whatever phase we are evolving, we are developing, we're finding new things about ourselves, we're growing. We should be finding new things about ourselves. We should be growing in the way we love and care for ourselves. We should be growing in the way we respond to ourselves, right? Mentally, physically, emotionally, spiritually, we should be identifying new things and ways to do that. That shows that we care for ourselves, right? So at this phase in our life, we should not, and I'm using it lightly because I know everybody's in different spaces, but I'm just saying, like, right now through this places in our life, we should be able to give ourselves grace and mercy and love and compassion and forgiveness, forgiving ourselves and forgiving others and working towards that. So we're all in different processes, but it's something that can be accomplished if we work on it.
So I just want to lift up the last couple of things that were in the chat. Ladies, thank you so much in Facebook for sharing and for offering an extension to this conversation. It's really been great. Kinsey, Stacey said, thank you for the work that you do. She's very grateful for this healthy conversation. Victoria, yes, planning is not perfection. It is progress. If we don't start something, we won't go anywhere. We have to be honest with ourselves about ourselves and work from there to be better and to do better. And Phyllis says, right, like, we can't be afraid to reinvent ourselves.
That part.
Yes,
Yeah.
Crystal, I have found through journaling that there were areas in which I thought I was over it, that I am not. That there's still healing to be done, and journaling
Yeah.
has really helped us do that. So, ladies in Facebook, thank you for entering your voice into this conversation, and again, and extending it and helping this be a really rich opportunity for us to have this conversation. If I could offer anything, ladies, I would say comparison is a thief of joy.
Mm.
This is you versus about with you, no one else. When you think about what you need to get through these holidays, think about what it means for you to show up as your very best healthy self, and that everybody else benefits from that. So this is not a comparison conversation. This is about evaluating what you need and be willing to name that thing and write it down in order to be able to have the right kind of conversation. Stacey, I know you had some resources that you wanted to share with us.
Okay, let's see.
So ladies, please hang in a few more minutes with us. Stacey's going to share some resources. She's going to share her screen. Get your phones out so that you can screenshot it. And if you miss it here, please go back and watch the recordings. Chris is going to lift that up as we get ready to close out, but please know that this isn't your only opportunity to get access to this information. Stacey.
Okay, so we have, this is like, Michigan has done an amazing job at getting themselves together to provide individuals resources that allow you to connect. So the website is michigan.gov/helplines, HELP-lines, where you get all these different resources that you can connect with. They have online discussion groups, resources for teens, people you can talk to. They have webinars and just like these different chat groups that you can be a part of as you talk about the holiday. They even have a holiday chat. If you go here, it tells you stay well, support for managing holiday stress. That's every day, every Thursday at 7 p.m. It's free. You get on here with these group and have these discussions. And then we have the crisis lifeline that I want to make sure everybody has that information. It's 3 numbers. The National Crisis Helpline went to 3 numbers. Number 988. That's it. 988. Awesome. So you dial 988. That's a lifeline that allows you to connect with somebody 24/7, 365 days a year. And it's, just that way you can always be connected, even if you feel overwhelmed during the holidays. Some people may feel alone, lonely. Those things are real. And so just providing that with you briefly.
Thank you. Crystal.
I would think, right, that if you're still dealing with the thing, whatever the thing is, if you're still dealing with the thing, because somebody's saying, no, I don't need to do this. No, I don't need to call a number. No, I don't need to get therapy. No, I don't need to start journaling. But if you're still dealing with the thing, it's time to be honest and say, okay, I do need help. I haven't been able to do this thing myself. And you are definitely valuable enough to care for you. So I
text that to me, Crystal. You didn't have to do that.
But I think I'm so grateful for this conversation because somebody is going to be helped today. And thank you, Stacey, for your information. Because as you've said time and time again, my mental health is my business.
T-shirts, cups, mugs coming next year. We doing that. It's all our business. Yes.
So 2 questions for you, and then I'll come back and we can start this wrap up. How do we get in touch with you, and when is your next mental health awareness conference?
So our summit is coming 2023. You do not want to miss it. May 20th. And details are coming. Already started planning and getting the work ready because you know what? God is going to do bigger and greater things. And I am truly honored to be a vessel that he's going to use for that. So look forward for information. I can be found. My website is www.therestorationvillage.com. Let me see if I have that screen up. Oh, nope, I closed it out. Never mind. But www.therestorationvillage.com. check me out there, where you can just click directly to all the ways, my phone, my email, social media pages, all of that is available there. Again, www.therestorationvillage.com.
Thank you so much for your brilliance and your ability to spend your life in service of others, because that's really and truly what it is.
God be the glory.
And I love every bit of that. Michele, what can I say? Thank you again for doing what you do and being as amazing as you are. To our listeners, I hope this conversation starts a chain reaction of you intentionally and deliberately taking care of you. You are important, you are valuable, you are worthy, and you are amazing. Do me a favor. Please go and like the Amazing Woman Network page on Facebook, and also subscribe to the YouTube channel, which is Amazing Women with an E Speak. And then go back and take a look at some of all of these other past conversations and past episodes. I promise you, you will be blessed. Don't overthink it. Find a topic in the title that speaks to you. That is the 1, 2, or 10 that you need to listen to. Next week, please join us Sunday at 7, where our topic will be, you have not because you ask not.
Oh, wow.
You have not because you asked.
Wow.
I thank you all again. I appreciate, I love you. My name is Crystal Gunn. I am a Black woman, and I own my amazing.
Thank you, Crystal. Thank you, Stacey. One more time, an amazing opportunity to be in the presence of amazing women. Crystal, I cannot let this episode end without again thanking you for your obedience that you continue to lean into with such commitment, that you continue to bless and change lives of women who have not physically been in your presence. Your obedience humbles me every single week. And I'm blessed that I get to call you friend in this journey. So very grateful. Stacey, thank you one more time. I look forward to having you back in May as we prepare to learn more about your summit, as we get ready to pay attention to mental health in the month of May, because it is our business. My name is Michele Harper. I am a Black woman, and I own my amazing. Stacey.
Ladies, I want to tell you, thank you for having me here, this platform. I do honor you for just being intuitive and in tune to what's needed in this season, and allowing God to use you. And I thank you for having me here. I'm so humbled and honored and gracious for this opportunity. My name is Stacey. I'm a Black woman, and I own my amazing.
Thank you, ladies. Thank you, listeners. We will see you next week. Enjoy the rest of your night.
Good night.